Midnight Moon. Written by Suzana Thompson. Narrated by Sarah Sampino. Chapter 27. I arrived in Alaska a couple of days after Christmas, which had also been my 20th birthday. Although my dad had threatened to stop paying for my college education after I announced I was transferring to Alaska, he'd relented after I'd declared that I would just take out a student loan. I was, after all, his only child. They're still together after attending separate colleges for a year and a half, Mom told him. I don't think she made this decision on a whim. I'll be back home for the summer, I promised.
Only because your boyfriend is coming back,
Dad grumbled. I wanted to remind him that my boyfriend had a name, but I held my tongue. Now was not the time to argue after he grudgingly agreed to pay for my education in Alaska. What I had neglected to tell him was that I was also changing my major from business to outdoor studies, which was what Damien was studying. His enthusiasm for it was what had drawn me to it. I had wavered on it at first, because then I would be following him on absolutely everything in life. It was the opposite of being an independent woman. Yet it didn't make me feel unequal to him in any way. In fact, I would soon discover that we were partners on this adventure into the unknown future. Damien had kept the apartment he'd had the previous summer, rather than returning to his dorm. He took me straight there from the airport and urged me to rest after my long flight. We went out to dinner after my extended nap and re-energizing shower.
I'm so glad you're here,
Damien told me. Me too, I said. And I'm glad it's not any colder than in Ohio.
Anchorage is pretty far from the Arctic Circle, so the weather is mild compared to some parts of Alaska, he explained. The winters here aren't that bad.
He presented me with a pair of skis for my birthday when we got back to the apartment.
We'll start tomorrow.
No, I told him, as I set aside the skis and moved closer to him. We'll start tonight. Our kiss unleashed the passion we hadn't been able to enjoy for months. We kept each other warm as we shed our clothes. Lying in bed after our heated love-making session, I cuddled happily with Damien. When's the next full moon? I asked.
Not for another couple of weeks, he said. We've got plenty of time to catch up before then.
I opened my mouth to tell him of my plans, but gasped when he quickly slid down my body and flicked his tongue over an extremely sensitive spot. How do you move so fast? I asked, between increasingly labored breaths as his tongue continued its soft but relentless pressure.
You want it slow?
He questioned, and teasingly slowed down his ministrations to a torturous pace. He soon had me pleading for release and climaxing yet again. After we finally both lay spent, I broached the subject that was now at the forefront of my mind. Damien sat up in bed after I told him.
Are you sure about this, Clarissa? There's no going back after it's done.
I know that, I said, and then proceeded to describe my wolf dreams to him. I want to experience that with you.
That's amazing,
he exclaimed.
It's something most people can't really imagine, but your dreams are so accurate to what it's like. But there's more to it than that, he reminded me. Your senses are still in hyperdrive when you're human. Hearing, smell, all of it is very strong. It can be very distracting until you get used to it.
I'll deal with it, I assured him.
The full moon,
he continued.
It's not always convenient, but you can't avoid it. You always have to find excuses to hide the change from people, even your family.
You wanted me to change, I declared. Why are you trying to talk me out of it now?
I just want you to know what you're getting into. I've been living with it for over 2 years now, and it doesn't ever go away. You can't take a break from it and go back to normal for a little while. Yeah, it's got its advantages, but it also isolates you from other people.
I thought about how lonely it had probably been for him out here. We'll have each other now.
Do you understand what I'm saying? He demanded. You can break up with me, but you can't ever change your mind about being a werewolf once you become one.
I'm not going to break up with you, I insisted. Haven't I proven that to you by moving out here?
Remember Bryce and Taylor? And Daphne and Jeremy, he was so understanding and supportive of her until he had to deal with her being a werewolf. Things changed, Clarissa, but you can't ever change some things.
You're right that you can't change some things, like me being in love with you, I exclaimed. And Jeremy didn't break up with her. He just asked for a little time to come to terms with it. Daphne had told me that he'd been calm, but asked for her to show him her transformation during the next full moon, after she'd told him her secret. She hadn't been entirely sure if he believed her, but his reaction had been less calm when he saw her change before his eyes. He'd stood his ground as she approached him in her wolf form, but he'd looked scared. Jeremy had let her sleep at his place that night, and even thoughtfully set out her clothes for her in his bedroom. He'd had a pensive expression on his face, though, when she'd found him sitting on the couch the next morning. After driving her home in silence, he'd asked her to give him some time, saying that hearing her describe it hadn't really prepared him for seeing it happen. Daphne had agreed to let him sort it out on his own. "I just want you to know how I feel about you before you go," she'd told him before kissing him. Feeling him respond to her kiss had given her hope that their relationship wasn't over. That hope was now dwindling.
"A little time,"
Damien marked derisively.
"That was months ago. He was too much of a coward to tell her straight out that he doesn't want to see her anymore."
Despite my caution about the validity of Daphne's dream, I was deeply disappointed that it didn't seem to be prophetic. It had sounded so wonderful. "We're not Daphne and Jeremy or any other couple," I stated forcefully. "We're together, and we're going to stay together."
"And you don't have to change for us to be together,"
Damien said.
"I'm just happy that you're here with me."
We set that argument aside until I brought it up again the day of the full moon. "Tonight's the night. I'm so excited."
"There's a full moon every month,"
he reasoned with me.
"What's the rush? Why don't you wait and think it over at least one more month?"
"I've been thinking about it the whole time we were apart. It's not a spur-of-the-moment decision," I told him. "I know I want this."
"I don't want you to hate me,"
he exclaimed. "Why would I hate you?" I questioned in bewilderment.
"If you hate being a werewolf, you'll hate me for turning you into one. Please, Clarissa, don't rush into this."
"I'm not," I insisted stubbornly. "I finally know what I want, Damien." I stepped closer to him and purred into his ear. "You." My hand dipped beneath the waistband of his boxer shorts to grasp him. "Us," I told him, after I straddled him on the bed. "More," I said, when I joined him in the shower afterwards.
"God, woman, you are insatiable,"
Damien declared.
"It's a good thing I have so much stamina, but I still might not be able to keep up with you once you change."
"You'll do it?" I asked happily.
"I just can't say no to you,"
he murmured, before kissing me hungrily. I knew that his primal urges were especially strong right before the full moon, and we didn't leave the apartment at all until it was nearly dark. By that time, I was very sated and very tired, but Damien was full of restless energy and eager to get outside.
"You can sleep for a while,"
he offered, trying one last time to dissuade me. "After you bite me," I said.
"Sounds kinky,"
he joked. "It might be next month," I told him, trying to sound suggestive, but ruining it with a yawn. He laughed as he made sure that I was bundled up against the cold. Then his expression turned serious.
"Are you sure?"
"Damien," I said warningly.
Okay.
He quickly placated me. He drove to the forest and handed me the keys after taking his backpack of supplies out of the trunk. There was no one else around on this winter night as he removed his clothes in preparation for the change. "It is kind of kinky," I commented, but his focus was already on the moon. I hadn't watched it happen since I'd seen Kristen change. It was truly incredible to see a person transform into a wolf. I gaped in awe as Damien turned into the black wolf. Then I walked slowly toward him and held out my hand. "Do it," I urged. He stared at me for a moment with his yellow eyes, And then he bit my hand. It wasn't deep, but it was enough to break the skin and draw blood. "Thanks," I said, as I inspected my hand in the moonlight. He whined and trotted toward the car. "Okay, I'm going," I told him, but I was truthfully anxious to get out of the cold. I opened the car door and looked back at him. "See you in the morning." He made another wolf sound before picking up his backpack with his jaws. Waiting until I had started the car, he took off to roam in the wilderness. I drove back to the apartment, secure in the knowledge that he was leaving me behind for the last time.